Welcome to the Restricted Handling Podcast. This is what's been going on in China in the past 24 hours. China is still living with the consequences of what happened in Venezuela, but today the story has clearly moved into its next phase. Beijing isn't publicly dwelling on the embarrassment of being sidelined in the Western Hemisphere. Instead, it's tightening control where it still believes it has leverage: technology, information, and it's near abroad, while quietly mitigating losses elsewhere. The clearest example is the sudden seriousness around artificial intelligence. We touched yesterday on how China has been uncomfortable with talent and data slipping offshore. Today, that discomfort has teeth. Beijing has formally opened a review into Meta's acquisition of the AI startup Manus. And this is not about Meta per se. This is about drawing a bright line around what China considers strategically sensitive. Manus may be based in Singapore, but its Chinese founders, parent company, and technical lineage give Beijing enough of a hook to assert jurisdiction. What's different from yesterday is tone. This isn't warning language anymore. This is regulators actively testing how far export controls on AI can go and how much leverage China can reclaim over algorithms, agents, and the engineers behind them. For Chinese founders watching from the sidelines, the message is pretty unmistakable. Overseas exits are no longer a clean break. That tightening instinct carries over into Taiwan, where yesterday's drill story now has more texture. We already talked about how Justice Mission 2025 disrupted flights and shipping. Today, we know more about what the PLA was actually practicing. Rocket artillery was fired into waters just outside Taiwan's territorial boundary, and multiple maritime zones were activated simultaneously, clearly rehearsing blockade mechanics rather than a single show of force. What's new today is how openly Chinese online discourse has leaned into decapitation fantasies. Calls for a lightning grab of Taiwan's leadership modeled on the U.S. operation in Venezuela. That rhetoric is loud, but it's also revealing. Taiwanese officials and regional analysts are blunt. This is social media bravado running far ahead of operational reality. Taiwan has been planning against exactly this scenario for years, and the PLA still lacks proven joint command performance under real combat conditions. In other words, the talk is big, the execution risk is bigger. The U.S. and its allies are watching closely, and the signaling is getting sharper. President Trump reiterated that he would be very unhappy with any move to change the Taiwan status quo, while again suggesting Xi Jinping would hold off during his term. Beijing responded predictably, calling Taiwan an internal matter, but what's different today is Japan. Public opinion in Japan has now clearly tipped, with China overtaking North Korea as the top perceived security threat. That matters because Tokyo is in the middle of rewriting its defense posture, doubling spending and openly linking Taiwan's security to Japan's own survival. Beijing's response, threats, rare earth warnings, military drills is escalating in parallel. This is no longer background tension, it's active positioning. While the Taiwan theater heats up, the Venezuela story continues to ripple outward. Yesterday, we focused on the shock. Today, we're seeing mitigation. China is now firmly in adjustment mode, absorbing the loss of discounted Venezuelan crude and leaning harder on Iranian and Russian supply while floating storage buys time. For Beijing, this isn't catastrophic, but it's uncomfortable, especially for smaller refiners that rely on sanctioned oil to stay profitable. The deeper impact is psychological. Demonstrated it's willing to combine force, sanctions enforcement, and energy leverage in one move. China noticed, Russia noticed, and a lot of smaller capitals noticed too. What's striking is how limited China's response options remain in the Western Hemisphere. Strong diplomatic condemnations continue, but reports indicate Chinese radar systems in Venezuela were effectively irrelevant against U.S. stealth capabilities. Beijing was caught flat-footed, with officials still on the ground when the operation unfolded. Today's takeaway isn't anger, it's realism. Venezuela is not a core interest worth escalation, and China is acting accordingly, even as it quietly works to repair what it can. Cyber pressure remains the connective tissue across all of this. Yesterday, the hacking of U.S. congressional email systems was breaking news. Today, the emphasis has shifted to what those targets say about intent. Committees dealing with China policy, intelligence, and armed services weren't random selections. This is collection aligned with decision-making, not disruption. Beijing continues to deny involvement, but the pattern fits long-standing behavior. Probe quietly, gather context, and stay below the threshold that forces a public showdown. It's espionage done with a metronome, not a sledgehammer. That same cyber posture shows up overseas as well. New reporting details a China-linked espionage campaign that's been active for years against telecommunications and critical infrastructure in South Asia and parts of Europe. This isn't smash-and-grab hacking. It's patient reconnaissance, custom malware, and relay infrastructure designed to be reused across operations. Think less Hollywood and more slow-burn chessboard setup. It's not flashy, but it's effective, and it reinforces how seriously Beijing treats the information domain. On Taiwan's doorstep, the human dimension of espionage got uncomfortably real. A former Taiwanese Marine has now been indicted for pledging allegiance to China, accepting payments for propaganda videos, and leaking sensitive military documents. The amounts involved weren't enormous, which is almost the point. This wasn't a deep-cover spy thriller. It was low-cost, high-impact penetration. Details on amphibious vehicles, drone programs, and major exercises were passed along incrementally. It's a reminder that pressure on Taiwan isn't just about missiles and ships. It's also about exploiting vulnerabilities one individual at a time. Internally, Beijing continues to tighten discipline. Another senior provincial-level official has been sentenced in a high-profile bribery case, reinforcing that the anti-corruption campaign is still very much alive in 2026. As external pressure mounts, internal control tightens. That rhythm is familiar, but it's worth noting how consistently it's applied when China feels boxed in internationally. At the same time, China is trying to score credibility points where it can. The extradition of a major alleged cyber scam operator from Cambodia to China is being showcased heavily in state media. This isn't just about crime, it's about jurisdiction and narrative control. Beijing wanted custody, not a U.S. courtroom, and it got it. The message is subtle but clear. China can enforce outcomes beyond its borders, especially in Southeast Asia, and it prefers to keep sensitive cases on its own turf. Information warfare continues to hum in the background. Party-linked outlets are amplifying stories about American economic fragility, portraying the U.S. as one crisis away from collapse for millions of households. At the same time, China's embassy in Washington dropped an AI-generated music video mocking U.S. complaints about Chinese overcapacity. It's half propaganda, half internet troll, and fully intentional. Keep the narrative noisy, blur seriousness with satire, and project confidence even when absorbing setbacks elsewhere. Thanks so much for listening and for being part of the RH community. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribing, leaving a quick 5-star review, or sharing it with someone you know makes a huge difference. It's how this network will grow. We also publish a daily written intel brief on Substack, where you'll find even deeper coverage of Russia and China, along with insights on the Middle East and the DPRK. This is free for Substack subscribers. Starting January 16th, new Substack subscribers will move to a paid model. If you're already subscribed on Substack before then, nothing changes. You'll keep full access to everything, free, forever. New subscribers after January 15th will receive the daily written brief, weekly deep dives on economics, sanctions, and more for a monthly fee. So if you're not on Substack yet, don't worry. Just head to restrictedhandling.com and subscribe now for free and get the content free forever.